The Long Island serial killer case is one of the most perplexing and extensive criminal investigations in recent US history. And if you've been here at Grizzly True Crime for a while, you know we've been following this case very closely. If you want to, you can expand the description box, you can see the case background write-up, and you can find a link to the playlist, and then you'll find all the deep dives that we've been doing, all the documents we've been reading, and everything that's unfolded since they arrested this alleged serial killer Rex Heuermann, who was an architect in plain sight, living in Massapequa Park. His office was on Fifth Avenue in New York, and he's been charged with 7 murders already. Now, in case you don't know who District Attorney Ray Tierney is, and if you've never watched a press conference of his with us, I hope you will in the future, but let me read just a little bit about him to you, just so that you have a general idea of just how cool this guy is, okay? And how honored I am to have interviewed him. This, by the way, is a picture that was taken while I was interviewing him. So I would be somewhere there on the computer, and he's busy talking to me. Raymond A. Tierney is the current District Attorney of Suffolk County, New York, known for his tough on crime stance and extensive experience in prosecution. He is a graduate of Brown University and St. John's University School of Law. His legal career began in 1992 when he joined the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office as Assistant District Attorney. He has served as a prosecutor at both state and federal levels, accumulating over 25 years of experience, and he worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, focusing on lots of complex criminal cases and words I can't say on YouTube. Sorry about that. Before becoming DA, he also served in the Kings County District Attorney's Office, further honing his prosecutorial skills. In 2021, he was elected as the District Attorney in Suffolk County, and if you followed this Long Island serial killer case with us, also known as the Gilgo Beach murders, then you know in 2022 a special task force was formed. And that's where we really started watching all these press conferences featuring District Attorney Ray Tierney, and just observing the excellent work that they have done to catch an alleged serial killer and solve many other unsolved crimes. Now, one thing that I find very interesting about the work that District Attorney Ray Tierney is doing is that he has emphasized the use of technology and forensic science in solving crimes, particularly highlighted in this case that we'll be discussing with him today, and you're going to hear directly from him more about that, more than I could ever even try to explain. Well, I hope that now you know who we have on as a special guest today and what a big deal that is. And I want to thank Karen Murphy, the host of a radio show called Long Island Patriot Radio. I'm going to be linking her website in the description box, and over there you can actually listen to her radio show, which aired on February 7th of 2025, where this very interview was discussed. Why? Because Karen is the one who helped make this interview happen, and I will forever be grateful for that. Thank you so much, Karen. Okay, so now let's get to the interview. Welcome to Grizzly True Crime. This is truly an honor. I have always wanted to have you here on the show. The Grizzlies absolutely love you, so thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Now, the Grizzlies will certainly want to know a bit about your background and how you got where you are today. Maybe what is the life, a day in the life of District Attorney Ray Tierney, and also they'd want to know, how do you drink your coffee?
Okay, so I'll start with the last first. So I drink coffee purely for its narcotic effect. So as simpler, the better. I usually black, and I drink it for a purpose. I don't drink it to enjoy it. I drink it to keep me awake. So I'm not particular about I know a lot of people have specific things that they like with their coffee. My wife, my sisters. I'm not like that. Just if it has caffeine in it, I will drink it.
So can you just tell us a little bit about your background? Like, how did you come to be the district attorney in Suffolk County, and what's a day in the life like for you?
Sure. I think I have a very atypical way in which I became DA. I think I was a prosecutor for a number of years on the federal and state level in New York. I never belonged to a political party, so I never thought I would be district attorney. And then one day in 2021, sort of out of the blue, I was asked to run for district attorney. So I thought about it, and I was hesitant to do it, but I like to complain about things. So my dad always told me that, you can complain, provided that if you're ever given the opportunity to change things and you don't, well, uh, you've lost the ability to complain. So I thought there were things that as a prosecutor, as the district attorney, that maybe I could do. So I said, well, it's easy for me to complain about the other guys or the other girls, but you know, if I have the opportunity to make a difference and change things, I should. So I decided to go for it, even though I never ran for political office before. And so when I ran, fortunately, I won, and here we are. But as far as being going to law school, when I was younger, I was a decent writer. I liked to talk, and so people said, "Oh, you should be a lawyer." And my concept of what a lawyer is, oh, that's the person who goes into court and tries cases and puts bad people who did bad things away, protects society. So that was what my sort of very unsophisticated juvenile thought of what a lawyer does. And as I got older and realized that lawyers do a great many different things, I always sort of thought, well, I wanted to be a prosecutor. So I went to law school with a specific idea and purpose of becoming a prosecutor.
I can only imagine you were top of your class. Am I right or no?
I think I did well in school. I think top of the class is probably a bit of a stretch. But, I enjoyed law school. I thought law school was really great. I think law school teaches you how to think. So, it's sort of, facts, issue, resolution. So I like that. And that's kind of how I thought anyway. So it sort of refined those skills.
Well, we're grateful that you are in the position that you are in, and now you have an international audience watching you. I don't know if you know that. Like, I'm South African, I live in Switzerland, my audience is from all over the world, and we love to watch your press conferences and just the way you deliver the information. You really have this sense of trust that you build. I don't know if people tell you that. If you didn't know, now you know.
Oh, good. Well, no, that's nice to hear.
So I'm going to get to some case questions in a moment, but still what's lingering is, what does the day in the life look like for you? Like, what time would you start working or get up, and do you work late hours? I can't imagine, even just with this Long Island serial killer case. I mean, it must be so many hours of preparation that you have to do.
Sure. So, our office, we have Suffolk County is one of the largest counties in size in New York State, and it's 1.5 million people. So it's sort of in the shadow of New York City. So in certain areas, it's very almost urban, and then in other areas, it's remote, and so it varies. The issues and that confront us as a prosecutor's office. I'm very hands-on, so I don't. A typical day there's no such thing. It's very atypical, because when you're dealing with prosecution in cases, I remember we had a very good year as far as statistics, as far as us being a safe county. And then all of a sudden, it seemed right around the holidays, everything just went sort of haywire. And we had a 14-year-old girl who was missing. We had a bunch of other things going on. So, there are no hours. And when something happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, you find out about it and you start working. And, you start, and the day is very, for us, sort of dull. And then all of a sudden at 5:15, all heck breaks loose, and you have to go and deal with it. So I think where I I consider myself a prosecutor, so and not so much as an administrator. So when something happens, we deal with it. We're busy. We work with our partners. We work with our prosecutors. We work with our investigators, our analysts, really basically everyone. So it's both days are hectic and basically nonstop.
I will never compare my career as a YouTuber to yours, but it sounds similar. It's also like that, especially with my time zone. Oh my word, something's happening at 3 a.m. and I am up.
Yeah, no, I think in that respect, it would be very similar, because you're not, you can't set your schedule. Your schedule needs to be set subject to, what's going on not only in the world, and with us, it's most frequently crimes occur not between 9 and 5. They occur, frequently at inconvenient times, in areas that are remote, where there are not a lot of witnesses. So when they happen, we have to be responsible. We have to go out and deal with it. So that's what we try to do.
Yes, and I have to catch your press conferences. You're always early. You're very punctual, sometimes early. We've got to catch those and be.
We try to be punctual. I until I had this job, I was the foot soldier. And so it always used to sort of bother me when you kept people, you were kept waiting. So sometimes it can't be helped, but for the most part, we try to be respectful of people's time, and we try to, be on time. And when we say something's going to start at 11, we try to make sure it starts at 11. That's not always the case, but for the most part, that's what we do.
So the work of the task force has been exemplary. How many investigators remain on Gilgo, and how many are assigned now to the cold case unit at the moment?
See, this is where I get cagey. So the answer to that question is as many as we need them to be, and it really does. It varies, so we say, when we're doing the investigation, there's a core group, but like when we were in the grand jury, we were doing surveillance, a great many people from a great many different law enforcement agencies. So I would say it varies depending upon what we're doing. Another thing, to be perfectly honest, I don't really know at any given time, because, we have a number of different agencies. So, there's an aspect that, say, the state police are working on. They're working on it. Is it one person? Is it, so we try to keep it, we try to keep it within, the bounds of the task force, just so, because the discovery requirements in Suffolk County are so onerous. So, we're constantly cognizant of that, and we want to make sure that we're keeping all of the necessary discoveries. So for the most part, that's why we try to keep it smaller than larger.
And what a giant task it is, because I can only imagine with this case against Rex Heuermann, it's sort of only the tip of the iceberg, perhaps even the beginning. If I had to just observe, what would you say to that?
Well, I mean, I think when as a member of the public, what you see, you see the press conferences and the information that is provided in the press conferences are obtained from the bail documents. And the bail documents are, we like to do in New York State, we have difficult laws, we have bail laws, and it's quite often difficult to hold people in on bail. So what we've decided to do is we make written, in our significant cases, we write written bail submissions. So there's a record of what we argue. So no one can say, well, we didn't know that. If a judge comes and lets someone out and then something happens and suddenly, well, we didn't know that. Well, yes, you did, because it's in the bail document. So we try to do comprehensive bail arguments on our significant cases, and that's what those documents represent. But having said that, all the information in the case is dwarfs those documents, and the only thing that I could really comment on is that which has been publicly disclosed. So suffice to say, there is just a mountain of information that is involved with this case, which we're providing to the defense, but the public that only knows an infinitesimally small percentage of that.
What would that percentage be? Because normally I've heard like law enforcement say the public might know 10% of a case, and when the PCA comes out, maybe 50%. But I'm thinking in this case, the public, even though I read every document to my audience that you put out, we go through all of them, even if it's 100 pages. I'm assuming we would only know 20% of what's going on.
20% would be very optimistic. And again, there's information, and there's all the information, and there's what we would deem to be relevant information. So you have to keep that in mind. But when you talk about 7 alleged murders spanning from 1993 to 2010, in and of itself, that's just a tremendous amount of information. Each case has crime scene photos. Each case has a extensive investigation, interview of a number of witnesses. So really all of that stuff has not been disclosed to the public as of yet. That's not even the trace evidence, the DNA evidence, the phone evidence, the financial evidence. So I don't even think it would be 1%.
The amount of information that has come out since you arrested Rex Heuermann is already, for us, from a public perception, it's amazing. It's a lot, and the work seems very thorough. And as I say, you build a sense of trust, and we are just watching you work.
Well, thank you.
So how has the formation of the cold case unit influenced the investigation into the Gilgo Beach murders, and what are your expectations for its impact on others unsolved cases in Suffolk County?
Yeah, so, it was, ever since we came in, it was a bit of a, it was, we came in, we had this information, and, we focused on the cases on Gilgo. Fortunately, we had some avenues to go down, and we developed a suspect. We made arrests, and again, these are just allegations right now, so we need to prove them in court. We look forward to doing that. But in doing that, in looking at the cases on Gilgo and then the cases off, we saw that there were a number of unsolved murders. And one thing about Suffolk County that you have to understand is we live in the metropolitan area. So the greater metropolitan area is largely urban, and Suffolk County is not only suburban, but in some cases it's rural. So Suffolk County is the one place where, if you want to, leave a body, it's much better than the adjoining county. So unfortunately, I think we have more than our fair share of that. So over the years, we had a number of these cases. And so what we decided to do was we treat all of our cases like Gilgo, but we wanted to specifically treat our unsolved cases. And, with the task force model and some of the new science, let's revisit some of these cases and see what we can do. So that's what we've done. And hopefully we'll be able to provide closure for some more families.
Can you tell us why you chose 5 out of the 300 cold cases that you mentioned to highlight on your Facebook page? And do you plan to highlight more?
I think that's on a case-by-case basis. And I think there are reasons, and anything that we do as a prosecutor or prosecutors or as a task force, it has to have a prosecutorial purpose behind it. And in some instances, there are some really good reasons why you want to hold information back. And in other instances, it's really good to release that and ask the public for help. So we do that on a case-by-case basis. We picked those 5 cases because we thought that there's a chance that the public could provide us with information, and that would help us to propel the case forward. But absent that, you don't just release information for the sake of releasing information. And I'll give you an example of that. So early on, with regard to the Gilgo case, there was talk of the Gilgo 4 and this burlap. And for whatever reason, the perception amongst the public that it was the burlap that you use to wrap like plants in or trees in, like in a nursery. It wasn't, as we've since come to find. But prior to us taking the case down, people talked about this burlap. But when they were providing us with information, they were centering a lot of their information around nursery burlap. And we like this person because he or she has access to this nursery burlap. And that was a way for us to know, well, maybe this information isn't quite as helpful as it might be. So, and again, also for the purposes in an unrelated case to Gilgo, if you have certain information about the murder that you don't release to the public, and then you get a suspect and you talk to that suspect, investigators talk to that suspect, and that suspect is then saying, well, I used, this implement, I drove this car, I was wearing this brand of pants, and only it hasn't been disclosed to the public, that makes that information provided by that person all the more compelling and powerful. So that's why you want to hold certain information back.
That is true, and that's a good point. And has it helped at all for the public to be sharing, even these 5 cases that you've chosen to highlight, as well as Asian Doe in the case that might be connected to Gilgo? We don't know that yet, but has it helped for people to be sharing that on social media?
Well, absolutely, because I think what happened with in the case of Asian Doe, we have an individual who died in a certain period of time, and a lot of time elapsed before it came to the attention of law enforcement and the public. So what we want to do is somebody had to know this individual. And so what we do with all of our cases is the first thing you do is you want to establish a pattern of life for that individual. What did this person do? Who knew this person? Where? What areas would they frequent? Are they part of Long Island? Are they part of the city? And how long? When was the last time anybody saw them? What were they involved in shortly before they disappeared? All of these answers to these questions would be very helpful to us. So that's what we're hoping to get by releasing this information. We're hoping someone who knew this individual could come forward and give us information about that person.
So what was it like for you and your team when you discovered the defendant? We're talking about the case against Rex Heuermann, the defendant's deleted planning document, which provided crucial information to be able to connect him to more unsolved cases. And how does that discovery contribute to your case regarding intent and premeditation?
Sure. I mean, I think again, these are allegations. We need to prove all of them in court. But one of the elements that we need to prove is intent. And I think if you look at that planning document, our argument would be that it evinces a single-minded intent. That is an individual who is looking to specifically target individuals for one purpose and one purpose alone. That is to kill them. And so it's what we deem to be a key piece of evidence, which will be helpful to us in establishing the requisite intent for the charged crimes.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when that was discovered, like in all the deleted documents. Oh my goodness.
There were a lot of instances through the course of the case where, very important moments, and that certainly was one of them, I think.
So this is actually quite exciting based on your previous press conference. So what specific advancements in forensic technology have been instrumental in linking the defendant to the crimes? And how have these technologies changed the approach to the investigation since its inception?
So I think there's really only been, one advancement, and that's the nuclear DNA, and with the getting nuclear DNA profile from hair. We had the phone evidence, and the phone evidence in this case was developed by the FBI in 2010, 2011, and that's everything else sort of proceeds out from there. We have mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA has been around since about 1995, I want to say. I think the first mitochondrial DNA case in the United States was in 1995. So that's been around for a while. But we had this with this getting it's called WGS, or whole genome sequencing, and that's where you sequence the entire or as much of the whole gene, the whole DNA as possible, and then you look for specific areas of difference or similarities, depending upon if you want to eliminate somebody, you're looking at differences. If you want to include somebody, you're looking at the same. And prior to I would say recently, you couldn't get DNA from inside a hair shaft, and the reason for that is you're looking for differences, and the main way that forensic scientists or criminologists use DNA is to look for changes in gene sequences. Like, so STR is what is used in the United States. That's short for short tandem repeats. And so what you're looking at, DNA is either adenine, guanine, cytosine, or thymine, and that's all. That's the basic building blocks of DNA, and that you have those those substances, those compounds, they will appear in certain patterns, and that's what STR looks like. So you'll see ACTGA, and then that pattern will repeat itself at a particular location on the gene for a number of times, and that's what the science of STR is looking for. But because you're looking at those changes in sequence, you need a relatively large strand of DNA. The problem with old or degraded DNA or DNA that's been out, it gets degraded and it breaks up, so you don't have the longer strands. In the case of hair, because there's not a lot of room in the hair, the hair itself is or the DNA strands inside the hair are broken up. So you really can't do those short tandem repeats because the DNA strands you get aren't long enough. So what this new technique uses is looks at the individual A, C, T's, and G's and looks and sees how are they different or how are they the same. So you need less DNA, but because you're doing this whole genome sequencing, you're getting less the strands of DNA are smaller, but your results are going to be larger. So, I would submit with regard to SNP and utilizing whole genome sequencing, this is the future of DNA sequencing.
And it sounds like it could help
Did that make
solve.
sense? Did that make
Yeah,
sense?
it made sense. I was thinking, wow, the younger you must be so proud of you. Honestly, I'm like, wow, look at you speak about all that. And I have read I think it was a 95-page document all about that new. I know you say it's not new, it's from 95, but it's new to New York, right?
Well, the
Using that.
mitochondrial DNA has been in since
Yes,
1995. This
yes.
DNA analysis has been used to identify war dead, 9/11, remains of 9/11. It's used for gene therapy. It's used to detect genetic diseases. It's used, I don't know, when my wife was pregnant, there was this test called amniocentesis, where they would have to take this big to try to find out if there was any genetic issues with the fetus. They would take this big needle and pierce the fetus and try to get amniotic fluid to test for, get the DNA of the child and test for it. Now, because you don't need as much DNA, you could use this technique, and now it's done with the urine test. So it's used in the scientific community, in the medical fields, anthropology, to a determination of you have two Neanderthal bones. Well, is it from the same person? Is it from related people? They using this technique, even though the DNA is degraded, because you don't need these strands of DNA, you could still get not only a result, but a comprehensive result. So the science itself has been around for a while. Its application in criminal cases is recent. I think there was a case in Canyon County, Idaho, that utilized it, as well as in California, but I think that's it.
And is that because of budget? Because I could only imagine, why hasn't it been used to prosecute more cases
I
before?
think so. When I started as a prosecutor in 1992, and then back then we used RFLP, which is refragmentation length polymorphism, and that was, you got a very good, very discriminate results, very high numbers, but you needed literally like a bucket of DNA before you could get it. So it was good for the numbers, but you needed a lot of DNA. Then from there, they went to PCR, which is polymerase chain reaction. You needed less DNA, but the problem was the results weren't as discriminating. And then from PCR, you went to STR, which is a form of PCR, but you're looking at these short tandem repeats, these A, B, C, T's and G's that repeat in a pattern. That was great. That was better than the other two, but you still, notwithstanding, you needed relatively less DNA, but still, when the DNA was degraded or inside a hair shaft, you still STR couldn't be used. So this is just the way things evolve, and we've gotten to the point now, I think, where we're now in the next step of the evolution.
So some of the hairs that were found, like on the burlap, or, associated with some of the victims in this case, did this technology help at all, or was that a buccal swab with you know,
Well,
the
so what happens is, and this is why, when people talk about, the work of the task force, which we're happy with, and obviously very proud and grateful to all our partners of all the great work they did. But you have to go back to, the 1993, the Sandra Castilla murder, or 2010 when the Gilgo Four were recovered. You needed the professionals, law enforcement professionals, the forensic professionals to go in and take those hairs, and they did that. And they, at the time they took those hairs, the technology wasn't present for them for the DNA, the nuclear DNA to be tested. So they did their job, and then the technology caught up, and now we're able to get a nuclear DNA profile for. But the first thing, you get the hairs, but you need a suspect. So through the task force, we developed a suspect, and then we got abandonment samples to compare to the DNA samples obtained from the hairs, and then later we got actual buccal swabs to make sure that the abandonment samples were from who we thought they were from.
the defense, right, will attempt to separate all these cases. What will your plan be if they are successful in doing so? Would you then personally prosecute each case?
Well, that would be, I think as it stands now, I have to, they're looking for 5 separate trials. I don't know. I have an office to run. I think it would be difficult to do all 5 trials. I think what we don't like to, engage in conjecture or speculate as to what we'll do if something happens. What we're going to do is we're going to plan on what is before us. So we're going to oppose that motion. I think we have strong grounds upon which to oppose that motion. So that's what we're going to do. And then we'll let the chips fall where they may. But I think when you look at, the intent in all cases is self-apparent, and the cases were properly joined under the law, under New York state law. So we're going to ask that they stay joined, and we'll just see what the judge says.
When do you foresee, just generally, ballpark if you can, the trial taking place, if it is one trial, and for how many weeks would that last?
It's difficult to say because the judge. The defense is still getting information in, synthesizing that information, making motions. Now we've seen 2 motions made by the defense, which will need to be litigated and responded to. The first one being the DNA. And it looks like we're going to be having a hearing on the DNA fairly shortly. And then we're going to have to make a legal argument on the joinder issue. But there are other, I'm sure there'll be other pretrial issues as well. So we have to allow that all to wend its way through. But it's sort of like each step, the next step plays off the earlier steps. So, you really can't say because there's a lot of factors involved in this. I will say this, that, when you talk about cases of this nature, cases of a number of alleged murders happening over a span of time, cold cases, a lot of jurisdictions working on it, a lot of different sciences, forensic sciences being applied, and you apply that to other cases around the country, these cases tend to take longer than normal just due to their complexity.
Yes, and fully understand that as well. And hopefully you'll still be in office, right? Is it you can run for 2 terms? Is that true?
Well, I can run for as many terms as I want.
Oh, okay. They can keep voting for you. I hope they do. I'm going to ask a question I know that every single person in my audience will ask is there ever a chance of this trial being live streamed? Any cameras in the courtroom?
Well, I think I think the press is going to want that. And so I'm sure they'll make that application. I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine they would. Then it would be up to the judge to make a determination. And I think that would, we could oppose, the defense would oppose. So I would imagine there would be opposition. So then it would be up to the judge, and oftentimes the judge would sort of split the baby, and while it wouldn't allow video, would allow some still photography. The difficulty is you've got you've got the jury that that necessarily they have privacy interests. And then, of course, our witnesses, they have privacy interests as well. And once you disseminate something and it goes out digitally on the internet, well, then that person loses control of that image in perpetuity. So the judge has to balance all those issues and come up with a decision, which I'm sure he'll do in this case.
Would assume so. I mean, I wish not.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't really answer the question. But I mean, I think the public certainly has a right to know, right? But then the participants, the witnesses, everyone, they have a right to privacy. So the judge has to sort of balance those issues and come with a decision. And I'm sure he'll do that.
Yes. Well, if you ever want to watch one of the trials that I cover with all the Grizzlies, what we do is we do our best to protect the witnesses, obviously the victim and their families. We definitely, don't allow people to attack them or dox them or do anything like that.
I don't watch a lot.
You don't watch YouTube?
Well, you know what? Sometimes I'll read, but actually watch. I don't know. Watch a real trial is not. I mean, on TV it's very exciting. In real life, it's much less exciting than it is on TV. There's not those. There's a lot of procedure. There's a lot of evidentiary backgrounds, and what do you see this document? Yes. Do you recognize it? Yes. What do you recognize it to be? How do you recognize it as such? Is it fair and accurately depict that which it portrays? And was that item in same or substantially the same condition as it was when you last saw it on such and such a date at such and such a time? All right, we're moving into evidence. All right, I'll do that for 50, photographs. It starts to sort of lose its cachet after a while.
We really like it. Grizzly True Crime, we love to watch trials together, and we learn so much.
When I started in 1992, there were people who would go to the courthouse, and they were courtroom watchers, and they would get to know you, and they would watch your case, and they were really into it, and they were really helpful because they really had interesting insight. But I had that as a state prosecutor. I also had that as a federal prosecutor. I think with the advent of the internet, they don't do that anymore. I guess they go on the internet and they watch. They get their fix by watching trials on the internet. But I like that community. That was a good community. They were really interesting to talk to and helpful.
Yes, and I must say I've had some district attorneys reach out to me almost after every trial because they say a lot of the attorneys will tune in just to see, well, where did they go wrong or what could they change? It's like quite a useful learning tool, I find, that it's becoming, is this online social media, people watching trials together, because we're kind of like an international mock jury for you.
Well, I think it's helpful. I think when as a young prosecutor in New York, you have a preliminary stage. So our cases are the grand jury. So you present your case to the grand jury, and it's a good opportunity for young prosecutors to sort of learn their craft. And then because as prosecutors, as people in the business, you have a certain perception of things, and then you could fool yourself into thinking that citizens think the same way, but they don't always. Oftentimes they don't. So if you go in and you have the opportunity to do something with members of the public after it's all over, to go back to those same people and say, okay, well, what did you think? How did you think? Not so much what you did, but what did you think of the witness? Did you find them credible? Or did you find them incredible? So all of that stuff is very helpful. And so I would imagine that it's a good idea for prosecutors to call you after it's all over to sort of learn about what things that they could do better.
Okay, so given the complexity and the duration of the case, how do you ensure that the prosecution, that's you, maintains a clear and compelling narrative for the jury, especially considering the vast amount of evidence collected over the years?
Well, that's a really good question, and that's something that we are going to have to very carefully consider, because in the beginning, right, like this was a very unique case in that we were developing our case through the grand jury, like in real time. And so, the evidence was changing a bit every day. Like usually what happens is there's a case, an arrest is made, and your evidence is your evidence, and it doesn't really change. In this case, because we were compiling the evidence on the go, our case was changing. So, the case in July of 2023 looks very different than the case we have now. So what you have to do as a prosecutor is you have to consistently say, okay, back then, this is probably what our case would look like. But given the information we have now, maybe we need to change that a little bit. So that's something that we work on. It's something we struggle with because that's what we're going to have to figure out. And so I could tell you what that looks like, but of course I'm not, because, number one, it's going to change. But number two, there's really no reason that would help me for me to to give you insight into that. But those are the considerations that we think about, because you're right. The case is very different than it was when it first started. And all of this evidence, well, will it overwhelm a jury? Will it be redundant? These are all really great questions and really important considerations for us. And we're constantly thinking about that, because that's, you want to be complete, but you also want to be compelling, and you don't want to lose the jury by sort of losing them and overwhelming them with minutia.
Yes. So in the past,
I probably overwhelmed you with minutia.
Oh. No, not at all. So in the past, images have been released of some of the victims' clothing labels. Would you ever release images of the items of clothing themselves? Do you think that could help the case or no?
I mean, I think we would have to, envision a scenario where it would help before we did it. And, all the information we have received, I think, I don't right now, but and it's not completely up to me. It's in consultation with our partners. But if it made sense to do so, we would. But right now, I don't think we see the efficacy in so doing.
Okay. And is there any political red tape with Nassau, I hope I'm saying that right, pertaining to Peaches' case?
No. We're working with as I'm sure your viewers realize, when you're talking about Peaches, or what is now known, the individual now known to be Peaches, there's the toddler, who is Peaches was the toddler's mother. The toddler was found on Long Island, Suffolk County. Peaches was found in Nassau County. So that's just something that we're going to have to work. And we have been working together with Nassau. And so they've been helpful. And we certainly appreciate their work, and we'll continue to work with one another.
So do you know who Peaches is? It sounds like you might know who Peaches is.
Oh,
we don't know.
There's been no, the identity of Peaches has not been released.
Okay. We look forward to that press conference one day. So with the case drawing international attention, because of course, the media locally for you, they would say this is now national. No, it's international attention. How are you managing the balance between transparency to the public and maintaining the integrity and confidentiality required for a fair trial?
Well, I think that's the tough part, and that's one of the reasons why we say these are allegations, and they are, and so we need to prove these allegations in court. We understand that. We respect that. We try to stay balanced in some of the things we talk about. We try to limit things to the facts, and let them know that we're going to make certain arguments. Defense is going to make their arguments, and listen. Every criminal defendant is presumed innocent, and that is as it should be. We understand that. We respect that. We welcome that. And when we get to the trial portion, we'll make our arguments. But regardless, whatever decision is made, that decision should be made based on the evidence in court, and that's what the court is going to take great pains to make sure that's what happens, as well as the parties. So, we understand that these are allegations, when we let the chips fall where they may. But that's one of the reasons why, when I do press, the press is very good at their job and what they're trying to extract information from me, and I limit what I say to that which has been publicly disclosed. Try not to speculate. They're always asking me, well, what about this? What about that? And I always say, we speak through indictments. And I think a prosecutor gets him or herself in trouble when they say, well, I think this. I think that, I think if you see, person A, we think they did this. Well, shut up. A prosecutor shouldn't talk like that. Prosecutor should look at the evidence, and a prosecutor should, if they have enough evidence and they're committed to their case, charge it through the indictment. Charge it through the indictment. One of the things, I was, as a federal prosecutor, I did all sorts of different cases, did public corruption cases, and you find, when you do investigate, you find things out, right? You find things out about people that are not necessarily flattering, but you do that through the grand jury process. And it's my obligation to keep that stuff secret. So you shouldn't engage in speculations. You shouldn't use the grand jury process improperly. And up and until cases are made public, indictments are sworn out, you should not talk about cases, and that's what we try to do.
I think you do that well. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your other tasks or projects? I know that's quite a vague question, but just from researching a bit more about you and your Instagram pages and everything, you've got your YouTube channel as well. What else are you working on that maybe we haven't heard of all that much?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think especially for your international crowd, so this is a big office. I have 242 assistants. I have a number of investigators assigned to my case and assigned to my office as detective investigators who are employees of my office. I have other great law enforcement agencies that I work with constantly, and we do a great many things. We do, opioid overdose, which we're just getting hammered with in not only in New York State or Suffolk County, in the United States. So we're working on that. We have gang and gun violence, which we're working on. We have a lot of quality of life crimes that we're massive retail theft, which we've done a good job in addressing. A lot of other quality of life crimes. I mean, my job as the chief law enforcement officer in Suffolk County is to keep my community safe and to do it in an effective but fair way. So all of those things we're constantly doing. This case that we're talking on is a very small part of the overall mission of my office. So we have to keep our eyes on that. We also have a really robust community outreach program where we go out into the communities. We explain to them what we're doing. If we have an indictment, we hold ourselves accountable. We talk about that indictment. We explain it. We try to, protect kids. We try to protect the elderly. So all of these things that we do, it's very, very busy. And I think, the public in general sees just a small part of it, but obviously the folks who are interested in this particular case see a real small part of it.
I can only imagine. But just know that this door is always open to you if you want to highlight any of your other cases, tasks, anything that you're doing. The platform is always yours.
Sure. Well, thank you.
So with well-deserved public support, what does a second term look like for you and beyond and for your team?
So I happen to be running this year. I'll be running, the election will be this November, and, I do what I do. I think some public officials say, oh, I have to start campaigning. I do my job, and my job is I'm out in the community. So I'm going to continue to be out in the community. I'm going to continue to work hard. We can't let that stuff affect what we do as an office. We're not going to let it affect what we do as an office. First and foremost, we have to continue to do the job in which we've been elected to do. We'll do that. But as far as what, if I'm fortunate enough to get a second term, what that looks like, I think it's more of the same. It's the things that I've already talked about: the opioid overdose crisis, the gang and gun violence, quality of life crimes, cold cases, continuing to work on those things and continuing to keep people safe. The other thing is, when we talk about, New York State law, we have bail reform, criminal justice reform, discovery reform. Those were passed before I got into office, and those were passed on the promise that if we enact these laws, we'll all be better off for it, and our communities will be more safe. Well, that was a lie. So I have to talk about that, and I have to get involved and say, well, these are common sense changes we can make to our laws that will allow them to be fair but also effective. So I have an aspect where I talk about that as well. So it's a lot. And fortunately, I have a fantastic team that I was able to bring in. I brought in a bunch of really great people. I know you talked to Alan, my chief assistant. Alan's great. So I brought in a bunch of great people like Alan, but I also had a bunch of, I inherited a bunch of great people as well. So I'm very fortunate. As I said, I probably all told, I have close to 100 investigators. I have 242 attorneys. I'm one person. So basically all the success I've had is because of them, not me. So I'm very fortunate to work with such great people. And that's just inside my agency. And then you talk about all the great agencies, state, federal, and local agencies that I work with, again, benefit from their great work as well.
A question I have is, if you're keeping everyone else safe, who keeps you safe? Because I mean, you've got a high profile role. So how do you stay safe?
I don't worry about that. I think other people worry about that. I don't worry about that. I'm confident that the people I surround myself with are professional. But I don't, I don't worry about that. People say I don't worry about, I should worry about that a little bit more, but, I'm very, very confident in that the people who I work with can keep me safe.
Do you think, I know, I'm just going to quickly ask a question the audience will ask. Do you foresee any other arrests in this case? The one against Rex Heuermann?
So we don't speculate.
Yes.
I think we had to answer a bill of particulars in which, it was the defendant act as a principal or accomplice. We think that he acted, our theory of our case is that he acted alone. We're going to proceed along those lines.
I must say you're very victim centered, and that's really great to see because you don't always see that. So you make sure to put them first. You make sure to show their pictures, to say their name. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think the interesting thing about this case is I feel really close, to the victims of my case. One of the nice things about being DA is I had a bunch of, big cases, and by big cases, I mean important cases that were very victim sensitive cases with young kids. And I sort of did those cases, and then I sort of, faded into anonymity. And then 20, 25 years go by. And then I ran for DA, and then I got back in the public eye. And those victims who are now adults, some of them have actually come and reached out to me and have come and visited me. And it's weird from my perspective, in the case of like children who are victims of crimes, and you prosecute those cases, and you have a very successful result in court. Which you're thankful for, but there's the other part of you that says, I wonder what happened to him or her. I hope they're doing well, and you never really stop thinking about them. You never forget them, and so for 25 years to come back and to see them as adults and to see that they're doing well is so gratifying. Really, really the best part of the job. So the reason why we do this is for the victims. So that's in general. And then when you talk about the Gilgo victims, there were some family members who actually reached out to me before I even took office. And, I connected with them. They're great people. They have, I think the tough part for them is, all of this is very interesting to people. And I understand that. But to them, it's the greatest tragedy of their lives. So I think for them, they say, do people realize that this is a real person and that this profoundly has affected our lives as a family? And obviously, someone very close to us has lost their life. Do people realize that? So it's a tough thing for them, and and in general, our criminal justice system is not. It's a system that's tough on victims and their families. So, we try to help them as much as we can. But, and honestly, they help us even more because, they inspire us, and they, through them, we realize that everything that we do and all the hard work we do they make it worthwhile. That's why we do this.
Yes, I mean, it's just so nice to see because, again, from an international outsider perspective, I mean, and it's New York, you caught an alleged serial killer and his name is Rex. Like, it seems like a movie. It's like, what is happening? But the way that you handle this case, the way that you talk about the victims really helps to focus on that's what this case is about. So, again, thank you for that.
I think I'll just say one more thing about that. So when you start the case and you read about the victims, they're just their names on a blotter, and you're compiling these biographical facts in an attempt to move the case forward. And then once you get to the point where it's the grand jury, now you start to meet the family members, and they fill in all the blanks, and they tell you about the victims, and that's what really drives the case home for us. And that was really a remarkable experience for all of us, because again, the strength and perseverance, and the way that these family members, they jealously guard the memory of their family members. It's very inspiring, and we all feel fortunate to be a part of it.
Yes, and in my small way, me too. To just study about all these victims, because as you say, if it's an alleged serial killer case, you could just like rattle off names. It starts becoming a list of names, but these were real people. This happened to them, so it's really sad. And I'm grateful to have you as the
Oh,
district
thank you.
attorney on this case.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with us. It was such an honor to have you. And as I say, you are always welcome. Anytime you want to talk about a case, a cold case, if you want to highlight something, promote something. I know that your team also emails when you've got like media releases
Yep.
and updates. So I really appreciate that. And just please know you're always welcome at Grizzly True Crime.
Thank you. Appreciate that.